Welcome to the Chomp Man tutorial series.
In this video, we'll show you how to create the timed fruit spawn and bonus pickup. To begin, let's go to our props prefab folder and we'll select one of our fruits. Next, let's open our prefab, and with our prefabs open, let's add a state machine component. Let's now create a new macro which we'll call fruit bonus macro. Since the logic for our fruit will remain the same, aside from the amount of points the player will receive, we can use a similar technique for creating the state that we did for our ghost and have all of our fruit variants under one state machine. And let's now go into our macro and let's rename our start state to picker, and we can remove the content inside the picker state. Before we continue, let's go over the base logic that will be inside of our bonus fruit state machine. Within our fruit state machine, we don't want it to handle the spawning. Inside the fruit state machine, we simply want it to be responsible for giving the player the appropriate amount of points. With that in mind, let's begin by creating 4 object boolean variables, one for each fruit. Next, let's create a state, and since we currently have our cherry selected, we'll use that as the name of the state. With our state created, let's now make a transition from our picker to our new state. And similar to our ghost, inside this transition, we'll simply have a boolean check using the booleans we just created. Since the logic for our bonus fruit is so similar to our dots, let's copy our nodes from our dots prefab macro. And then let's place them in the state we just created. Since our bonus fruit doesn't have a negative impact on our player's speed like our dots, let's remove all the nodes associated with decreasing the player's movement speed. Let's also remove the nodes that are related to impacting the current dot amount. With all the correct nodes in place, let's now create 4 object integer variables, one for each fruit, to represent the point value the player would get from consuming it. With our variables now created, let's change the scene dot point variable into one of our new object variables. The point values for each fruit tend to vary between each game. However, what remains consistent is the fact that the cherry is always 100 points and the point values of additional fruit increase by 200 points. So for our example, let's make the cherry 100 points. We'll make the apple worth 300 points, the strawberry 500 points, and the grapes 700 points. With our first bonus fruit state complete, let's now duplicate that state rename them, and set the appropriate values for each state for that fruit. Let's also make a transition from our picker to each state, and inside of our transition, we'll simply place a Boolean check for that fruit. With our state machine complete, let's first test our bonus fruit functionality before we add the components to the remainder of our fruit. To do this, we can simply place our fruit in our scene, and we can also disable our ghost spawns so it'll be easier. We also need to be sure that we set the boolean for that fruit before we begin testing. So we can see that once the player interacted with our fruit, that we have the appropriate point increase and the fruit was removed from our game. Let's also test some of the values for our other fruit, such as our grapes, which are worth the most points. Since the state machines in our fruit are working correctly, let's now copy both our variables as well as our fruit bonus state machine and place them on our other fruit prefabs. We need to also be sure to check the appropriate boolean for that fruit. With our bonus fruits state machine now complete, let's now move on to creating the spawning system for our bonus fruit.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be the first to see this and many other tutorials, game development tips, interviews, and free game asset giveaways.